I'm not gonna lie there, YouTubers. My team is literally making me do this video. The London system. Ugh. It's like the chess version of eating your vegetables. So no, I'm not gonna advocate you play it, but I am gonna teach you how to smash it. Actually, in truth, my perfect London system is going to have some fish and chips, taking a walk through Hyde Park, and catching a show in the West End. Oh, little London humor for you. But the reason I don't like it as white is because it's just not that ambitious. It's like saying, I want to grow up and get my rating to 1600. Well, 1600 is pretty good, but you know, when you guys get to high school, you're probably going to be over 1600. So without further ado, let's see how you can beat the London. Now, the London is any opening where white plays bishop f4 really early on, and usually something like e3 and c3, and it's just not very aggressive, okay? Now, in this particular opening, black is going to play the king's Indian defense, because after all, what white is doing is a system. It's not really a specific opening, it's more a setup for the pieces. So black's pawn could be on d5, but in this case it's going to be on d6. White is not really going to change the moves based on black's structure. Okay, now white plays the move e3. As I said, not very ambitious, not getting the snowplow. Black castles. And after bishop to e2, c5, trying to open up the diagonal for this bishop. Now, if there's one major thing I focus on when I play the London, it's to make this bishop a bad piece. And there's two ways you can try to do this. Number one is just clear out everything on the diagonal so the bishop aims at a bunch of blank space. Now that can be a little bit risky because if another white piece invades your army, the bishop might be able to team up. For example, if this knight ever found its way to c7, I know that's a long way off, but it is technically possible. What I like to do in the London, because I'm a King's Indian player, is I like to stick this pawn on d6 and make the bishop bite on rock the rest of the game. If this pawn stays on e7, it is very unlikely that bishop is going to do much except aim at a pawn that it can never capture. Okay, now white plays c3 again, very solid, guarding the d4 pawn about a million times. Black played b6, knight to d2, d6, blocking in that bishop. Now, a lot of times in the London, white is a little afraid of this knight going to h5 and trading for this bishop, so white plays h3, and the idea there is now the bishop can run all the way back to h2, and in fact, that does end up happening later in the game. We had bishop to b7, double fianchetto, white castles, knight to d7. So far, it's just a game. Both sides are just sort of developing rather normally. And white goes ahead and puts the bishop on h2. By the way, the hallmark of the London is this bishop coming out, and we're not going to talk about that bishop the rest of the game, because all black does is keeps the pawn on d6 guarded by this pawn, and that bishop doesn't do anything. Now, if white can ever get the pawn to e4 and then e5, then the bishop has a really legitimate purpose. But that begs the question, why did white not go for e4 all-in-one move a long time ago? Now white can't even play e4 because black has two attackers on that square. So black played a6, a very, very slow build-up, and white played b4. We had a quick capture, and now the rest of this game is actually pretty straightforward. Black just controls the open file, and black gets his pieces in the game, while white doesn't really ever do that. And this bishop just kind of sits there. Okay, I guess I did talk about that bishop one more time, but not in a very nice way. Okay, so rook c8. White plays the move queen b3, and then black just plays queen c7. Black is actually putting the queen in front of the rooks, and I believe if one of white's rooks lands on the c-file, we would trade the queen for two rooks, because in this position, white would have to put something in the way. Whatever that something is going to be pinned. Black is going to bring a second rook over, and all of these black rooks can invade, and I think the two rooks are actually much better than the queen in this position. So if we go back, white decided not to put a rook on c1 and played queen to b1. Very strange move. I guess white is hoping to challenge the file with the move rook c1 on the next turn. But then black plays the move knight to d5, and white can't exactly do that because now the queen is needed to guard this pawn. So we had bishop to d3. By the way, knight c3 was also a big problem, forking the queen and the bishop. That's why we saw bishop d3. Then we had b5, fixing this pawn on a square where the knight is going to target it. Okay, by the way, I should keep mentioning this move e4 is still really not terribly possible because after knight c3, this pawn is now being attacked a bunch of times. This pawn is in pressure, the queen is under attack, and I think white's position is just a little bit too loose. So if we go back, we had the move a3, as I said. Knight on 7 came up to b6, and these knights are invading. White's knights aren't doing much. The game actually ends in a couple more moves. We had rook c1, and then knight c3, and that's it. That's all. I said a couple more moves. I lied to you. It actually ended right here. White resigned in this position because there's no place to put the queen. I know it looks like there are some places, but there aren't. For example, whenever the queen lands on b3, we're just going to kick her backward. And if she ever goes back to b2, then the other knight's going to hop into this outpost. And eventually, at some point, the queen is going to land on c2. And when that day comes, knight e2 check is a very clever fork, which wins the game. Because if the bishop takes, now we take the queen. We've actually won the exchange. And in a position like this, where there's one dominant open file, and you've got more rooks than your opponent, it's actually a relatively easy win. The other option for white would be to not take that knight and just move the king. But then all black has to do is take the rook. And again, black is winning the exchange in all variations. So what can we say about the London bishop? It didn't do anything, and that's exactly what you want to do as black against that London system bishop. Okay, if you're still convinced on playing the London, well, you're probably not liking me very much right now. It is a popular opening, it's growing in popularity, but hopefully my video will show you not to be scared of it.